Born in Blood by COVID Candy. Chapter 361 Project. The meeting was finally over. More than an hour was spent in that sweat-inducing situation. As Ucladd headed up the stairs, Liam and Ucladd didn't linger for a second longer. Ucladd stored the stone token and headed for the castle exit, followed closely by Liam. That said, Liam attempted to study the castle's layout. But as they passed through the corridors, some paintings and decorations they had passed were no longer there. Even though the hallway Liam used to enter Ucladd's room was still the same, it was as though it had changed. Liam had no clue that was possible. He's controlling this place somehow. Like it's his domain. Nevertheless, Liam and Ucladd found their way out. Right ahead, the platform was waiting for them. As soon as they made contact with the platform, it began descending. Ucladd and Liam shared a tense side glance. The meeting went perfect. Just perfect. Liam knew from the start that mere words were not enough to finance a war. Ucladd obviously knew it too. They needed solid proof if their words were to have any weight. And it just so happened that Liam had a bright idea, which was improved upon by Ucladd. Of course, they couldn't just waltz up to the Aquarian royals and ask to see Nive. If that were the case, they'd kill her in a heartbeat to save their own skin and pretend she never existed. If she wasn't already dead. No. Instead, they had a better idea. Once they descended from the fog, Liam and Ucladd weren't attacked. The swarms of zenith vampires had cleared open a path, but their weapons were tightly gripped around their hands. Ministers. That's what Ucladd named them. A minister of defense. Minister of finance. Minister of security. Now that Liam gave them all a quick, assessing look, he realized what minister was in charge of what department. The Minister of Economy was a beautiful woman with elegant jewelry on her neck, ears, and hands. The Minister of Defense was the burly cultivator that threatened to attack. The Minister of Security was a skinny, hunchback, snake-eyed-looking man. There were others, too, but Liam didn't figure out the department they belonged to. Without a word, Ucladd slowly sank into a puddle of shadows with Liam to his side. Their work here was done. It was time to head home. The swim back home was much quicker compared to the initial journey. It had taken a week and a half, and they had suffered no visits from rank 6 creatures of the depths. As they swam to the shore of the island, Ucladd heaved a long breath. He looked tired. The pill that made his appearance healthy had long dissipated, revealing his snowy complexion and thin frame. Thankfully, the elders of the temple were there for their arrival. "What do you plan on doing now?" Ucladd asked as the sky filled with elders flying towards them. "I'll work on getting my deal with the kitsune done," Liam responded. Ucladd nodded absent-mindedly. "I'll work on the letter," he said. "Whenever you're done, let me know." Liam nodded. Elder Jax flew with Liam towards his dwelling. Little rascal. Getting more and more important as the days go by, eh? Jax teased him from the side with a smile. Liam sighed as he soared alongside the zenith. "I still remember when I drowned you in that vat. Ah, how time passes." "Indeed." "I need something, Jax," Liam said conversationally. "Yeah?" "Several zenith light-based magical beasts. Alive. Preferably a fox/wolf type," Liam said. "I have a certain project that just came up. Also, a few live zeniths." "We could afford to kidnap some now, right?" Liam asked with an arched brow. A grin crept up Jax's face. "Sure thing." Liam was back in his basement again. Alone. Right now, he was in deep thought. The kitsune. It's time, Liam thought with sharp eyes. Before we go any further, I have to find a way to resuscitate it. For several reasons, Liam needed to get this issue out of the way. Firstly, because it was the perfect time to do so. Right now, the temple needed more allies than ever. And the rank 4 kitsune was the only magical beast with a mental sphere that Liam had seen so far. It made it a one-of-a-kind specimen that many wouldn't turn a blind eye to. And the kitsune had nowhere to go. They were on an island. In the middle of a lolly. Away from its habitat. All these signs pointed to one conclusion. The kitsune's best interest was to stay and remain with the Temple of Shadow. It had no choice. Secondly, was because the radiant tattoo on Liam's abdomen was starting to get a little too bright. NOVELB1N. It's definitely some sort of protective measure to make sure I get the deal done. Which made sense. And it didn't take a smart man to realize what the tattoo would do once it realized Liam wasn't keeping up his part of the deal. Nevertheless, Liam needed to make the necessary preparations. First was finding a compatible magical beast for the kitsune to reside in. The seven-tailed fox no longer had a body. It just had mental energy and aura. But thankfully, ever since the sacrosanct tree was reaped, the spirit beasts of Ucladd had reverted back to their magical beast form. The rank 6 tree's influence had forced those changes in the magical beasts. But with it gone, spirit beasts were basically discontinued. I have the necessary tools to make it work, Liam thought. Mind isolation, body integration, and true transfer were all made to fit this purpose, too. I can even add improvements. There's no way I can get an exact kitsune body for it to control, but the closest thing should be good enough. There's still the issue of how this will work. All it's given me is mental energy and aura. All Liam could do was hope the kitsune did the rest. It took a week for Elder Jax to bring the necessary preparations to Liam's doorstep. A dozen light-based magical beasts in the 4th rank, and a dozen zeniths. All chained up with the ravenous leash bonds. It was time to begin. 362 Gender. Liam was under a time limit. Yusin was extending his life by spending most of his time sleeping inside his inner world. Through that method, he was able to reduce the aura and mental energy his body naturally used. But that was it. All it did was slightly delay the inevitable. Not to mention, it rendered him useless in doing other tasks. That was also why Liam didn't request his help with the kitsune. I have the confidence to get this working without him. Plus, the elders will help me out plenty, so it's fine either way. Like so, Liam began his work. The goal was simple. Isolate a zenith sea of consciousness, and fill it with the kitsune's mental energy. Obviously, this was an oversimplification. The mind-jack way of accessing the mental sphere was a perfect tool for this job. All Liam had to do was plug his mind into the zeniths and diligently clean away the memories and data stored in the translucent barrier. Then, he'd inject it with the mental energy stored inside the tattoo. The same method was true for the core. Liam had to wipe the aura stored inside the magical beast's core, then replace it with the aura of the kitsune. Then, he had to transfer the mental sphere into the kitsune as the final step. The more Liam thought about it, the harder the task seemed. But with the elders' help, it was possible. Thus, Liam began his work. Elder Jax helped out with most of the smaller details. The golden cranes and the elders specialized in inscriptions helped out. But at the end of it all, it depended on Liam himself. He had the most experience with the technique. Even if the elders had zenith mental spheres, the point still stands. It was him who made it, after all, but that wasn't the only reason. The king's eye played a major part in it. Because of the powerful sensory organ, Liam could see and pinpoint where the so-called data lived inside the translucent barriers. To his keen eye, they were like little iridescent scales, densely packed beside each other. Each little scale was barely the size of a red blood cell. Thus, with all this in mind, Liam began scouring his options. The magical beasts were lined to his left. The zeniths were lined to his right. Although there were 7 of each, there was more coming. So, Liam could afford making a mistake or two. Liam's eyes scrutinized the magical beasts in front of him. There had to be a match between the replacement and the original kitsune. The most obvious body replacement for the kitsune is the 4-tailed fox. But it's more of a subspecies of the kitsune. Kitsunes were incredibly rare. The more tails they had, the higher their intellect, strength, and abilities were. The 9-tailed fox was the strongest and most mythical of them all, gaining a legendary status among the world of magical beasts. But most of these creatures were native to Ikoria. What Liam currently had, in order, was the one-tailed fox, the three-tailed fox, and the four-tailed fox. The remaining magical beasts were of a different species entirely. Every attempt has to be a perfect run. I can't rely on numbers alone. Everything has to be absolutely set before the last and final step. Not to mention, Liam's mind edge was not just for battle. It was basically for anything that required focus. Then, Liam realized a problem. Wait. What gender was this thing again? It had a feminine voice when it spoke to me mentally. But that doesn't make it a female. When speaking mentally, one could easily change the tone and sound of their voice using mental energy. If they were skilled enough, that is. Screw it. We'll just say it's a female and get on with it. Thus, Liam picked out a Reaper wolf to begin with. First, he studied its massive composition. Last Liam remembered, the kitsune was roughly 7 to 8 meters high. It was on the larger scale of magical beasts. But its physique had been ruined due to awakening its sea of consciousness, which prompted the opposition's influence. No need to delay it any longer, then, Liam thought. Then, Liam took out his black blade. 11:26. Liam had the Reaper wolf hung from the ceiling to the left. Then, for the zenith, he positioned him on his knees to the right. Then, Liam took out his black blade. I was getting tired of not being used, the black blade said with dramatic sadness. That doesn't sound like what you think it does, Liam responded blankly. Especially with that voice. Some of the elders standing around Liam felt a little uncomfortable. end.He//L/B1N. They knew about Liam's ability to speak with his sword. Elder Aki and Jane already told everyone. But they couldn't hear the Black Blade's voice. Only Liam could. Nevertheless, they remained quiet in anticipation. After all, no one had seen Liam use his sword since he entered the inheritance. Elder Jax, Jane and Arisa were there too, quietly watching. All Liam would do was briefly cut around the Reaper wolf's core, while shaving away the glimmering white fur. There was nothing special about that. But still, they wanted to sate their curiosities. It's not like I learned how to be graceful during my time at the inheritance. Liam shook his head. Sheeing. Liam's arm blurred in quick succession, and a flurry of invisible lines enveloped the Reaper wolf and rank 4 zenith. In 1 second, all the fur on the Reaper wolf's body weightlessly fell off. At the same time, the circular cut on the abdomen revealed the Reaper wolf's core without so much as a nick on it. And a wide vertical cut on the zenith's forehead displayed its brain with no damage whatsoever. A round of applause and cheers followed. But Liam just felt embarrassed since it looked like he was boasting for nothing. Nevertheless, he ignored that and started with the human zenith first. Liam plugged in his mind with the zeniths and got to work. 363 grin. Weeks passed. Ever since Liam jacked his mind into the zeniths and peered at its contents through the king's eye, he'd learned several things about the sea of consciousness. Every little iridescent scale was an integral piece of the cultivator's mind. From what Liam deduced, they stored important data, like little storage devices capable of absorbing massive amounts of info. Memories, the subconscious and consciousness, feelings, emotions, senses and more. The tiny scales included all of these aspects. And there were several million of these tiny scales in each mental sphere. Not to mention, with each rank, they grew higher in number and infinitely more complex. For a zenith, this was especially true, since their minds were layered with complexity. Liam's goal was fairly simple. To chip away these little scales until there were none left. Once they were cleared, there was a high chance for the kitsune's mental energy to usurp the isolated mind and take over it. It was the only way. However, if Liam ever wanted to tinker with his own mind, it would get beyond difficult, since tampering with one part could affect others, too. Creating mental enhancements was a project set for the distant future, that was for sure. But even pulling away these scales took effort and time. Liam had to be diligent and graceful with his mental energy usage, and it was painfully slow. Nonetheless, he continued. Crack. The first zenith's mind shattered after a tiny misstep. Days of work went up in flames just like that. Nov, LB, 1N. Liam moved on to the next. Crack. And the next. Crack. And. Crack. The. Crack. Next. Needless to say, Liam was starting to get a little frustrated. Certain scales had more volatility compared to others. But they all looked the exact same. It was basically like playing a game of Minesweeper. But there were no directions of any kind to tell you where the bombs were. Liam clacked his tongue in annoyance. This was getting repetitive. Still, he persisted. Eventually, on the 5th try, Liam succeeded entirely in clearing out a mental sphere. It took 1 week of non-stop work. But it was finally over. And now? I can't risk this not working, Liam thought with furrowed brows. It's better to sacrifice this for a test run and study the results. Liam put 2 fingers on the zenith's forehead. Then, he slowly pulled them back, pulling an ethereal strand of the zenith's mental energy with it. Yanking out someone's mental energy was impossible if they were aware and resistant. But the zenith was currently unconscious and defenseless. Once he was done with that, Liam looked back towards the zenith. In one fluid movement, Liam killed the zenith cultivator and isolated his mental sphere. The mental energy was rapidly dissipating and emptying the sea of consciousness. But before the mental sphere shattered due to having no body, Liam imbued the zenith's mental energy inside it using the mind jack. Liam's eyes widened in amazement. As soon as the mental energy entered the empty sea of consciousness, the empty, translucent walls started to flicker with growing scales. Amazingly, the mind was resetting. But the strand of mental energy was too tiny. As the scales were formed, the strand was being used up. And soon enough, it flickered out and disappeared, together with the reforming scales. Liam still smiled. The important thing is it worked, Liam thought. Meaning the plan is perfectly usable. 3 tries later, Liam succeeded in clearing another mental sphere. This time, he was resolved to use the kitsen's tattoo. Liam had already fixed the core problem, since it was vastly easier to do so. All he had to do was feed the 4-tailed fox some powerful laxatives while simultaneously denying it food or water. As the poor thing emptied its bowels, its core was slowly drained of energy. As it emptied out fully, Liam replaced it with the kitsen's. And that was done. But now, it was time for the last step. Liam took off his shirt. The tattoo on his abdomen was brighter than ever. Damn thing knows that it's time to come out, Liam thought. Using his mental waves, Liam manipulated the tattoo to wrap around his fingers. Liam heaved a long breath. Then, Liam killed the zenith, used mind isolated, then imbued the kitsen's mental energy within the sea of consciousness. There was silence as Liam held his breath. The elders to his sides were quietly watching. Besides the general work, they weren't able to help at this step. Nonetheless, they watched like it was the most important thing in the world. As the kitsen's mental energy seeped through the zenith's mental barrier, it shook violently. It threatened to shatter and break. Liam used mind edge in an instant. Everything went sharp. In 1/30th of a second, Liam was able to recognize the problem. Using the remains of his mental energy, he wrapped all of his mental waves around the zenith's sea of consciousness, firmly holding it together. Although the shaking was still there, due to Liam's interference, it didn't shatter. Instead, the process inside continued. Slowly, the zenith's mental barrier was turning golden. Glitter-like shards formed within it. Cruder than a human's, but larger and sharper. In the span of a few minutes, the process was over. What remained of the cultivator was no longer human. It was the kitsune. But it was still just a mind. Liam calmly dashed over to the 4-tailed fox's body, then placed within it the ethereal sea of consciousness. Right after, the elders patched up the fox's exposed skull, cleaning it the best they could before running to safety. Silence. Liam held his breaker blade and stood unflinchingly at his place, his eyes narrowed. The four-tailed fox was massive. It was 7 meters high and 5 meters wide. But its head was placed parallel to the ground, and Liam stood at its nose. 5 seconds passed. 8. 10. The kitsen's golden eyes slowly opened. And a toothy grin formed on its maw. Chapter 364. Relax. Slowly, the kitsen raised its head. 4 of its tails suddenly perked upwards to the sky. Its body started to shimmer with iridescence, despite having no fur. Liam silently waited for the fox to get a hold of itself. Like with subject number 421 and all others, the patients were often unstable during their initial awakening. Although the toothy smirk indicated a success, Liam couldn't know for sure. The fox's sharp gaze swept the underground hall. Its large, golden eyes constricted maliciously. So many zeniths. What exactly happened during these 9 years? In reality, the kitsune didn't feel the passing of time. It was in a comatose state where it felt nothing, but was subconsciously alive. It still remembered being stuck in the Aura cave, surrounded by magical beasts and awaiting the inevitable. And now, it was here. It was as if one blinked and found himself in an entirely different place, in an entirely different time. A low growl escaped the fox's throat while a powerful pressure filled the area. "Oi," Liam called out from the side. "Relax." The kitsune didn't respond. N/0 Veld 1N. Its hostile focus was still on the hordes of zenith cultivators, the room's pressure steadily increasing. The elders looked at the kitsune with dark expressions. Their hands were twitching in fragile restraint. A fight was going to break out. "Oi," Liam calmly called out again. "Relax yourself." Silence. Liam was being ignored. "I said," Liam launched upwards at the kitsen's muzzle, then punched it as hard as he could. "Relax." Bang. The kitsen's head suddenly lurched to the ground, as though struck by a hammer. Liam landed lithely on the ground beside it. The kitsen's vision swam and his hand swirled with pain. "I told you to relax, retard." "There with me," Liam told the beast as it tried to regain itself. As it came to its senses, the kitsune looked at Liam incredulously. What was that power? Last it remembered, the human it made a deal with was a little squirt with high ambitions. And now he radiated unbridled danger. The elders seemed to be in the same boat as the kitsune. They'd never seen a mortal-ranked human capable of punching a zenith beast's muzzle without getting clipped, but then again, the shadow demon wasn't one to follow common sense. "Are you still the same human I made a deal with?" the kitsune said with a slight growl. It rose to its feet and stared at Liam with constricted pupils. Liam undid the color change of his king's eye. A soft golden glow emanated from his right eye, paired with a sharp constricted pupil. The kitsen's eyes slightly widened. The pressure emanated from both the elders and the kitsune faded away. "You actually did it," the kitsune said, smiling broadly again with a vicious set of teeth. "I was smart to trust you." The elders standing around looked amazed. An animal was speaking. Albeit, its maw was not moving. It was speaking through the mind. The kitsen's voice was, as Liam remembered, feminine. "Didn't have to take both eyes to prove your point, though," Liam said. "Well, you have them back, don't you?" "I would request back my eye, but you've earned it yourself." "I wasn't gonna give it back, anyway," Liam said, but didn't wait for a response. "What are you going to do now?" Silence. The kitsune smiled, then spoke in a solemn tone. "Go home, of course. I want to create my own pack, live in silence and peace. Find a mate, and so on. I've attained freedom. Best enjoy it." Silence. Liam chuckled lightly. "That won't happen." Silence. The kitsune frowned. "What do you mean?" it questioned darkly. Liam met its gaze with a serious look. "The place you call home now wants my neck. We're abroad now, distant from your homeland. There might be a war coming." Silence. If you think you can enslave me, the kitsune said, a dangerous glimmer appearing in its eyes. Think again. Liam scoffed derisively. If I wanted you in chains, you would be. You're no longer the strongest, and I'm no longer weak. The tables are flipped, now. You're in a tight spot, and I'll offer you a way out. Silence. The kitsune bared its teeth in a definitely pissed-off manner. I never said you couldn't leave, by the way. You're free to go wherever you want. The kitsune's malicious look slightly softened upon those words, but it still looked on the edge. But you won't make it far, Liam said. Ikoria has long closed their gates to Alalians, and Alalians are no longer accepting Ikorians. What do you think they'd do if they see a giant, talking fox approach their borders? Will they offer you tea, I wonder? Tense silence. The kitsune's mood definitely soured. And it was getting angrier by the second. You humans are all the same, the kitsune growled. Seeking to enslave or use. Never to change. Silence. Liam smiled coldly. Except I'm not human anymore. Only then did the kitsune realize something was off about Liam's aura. It made a slight shiver run through her spine, but she blamed her newly awakened mind for it. Plus, Liam said. You owe me. Huh? What for? The kitsune responded angrily. I gave you the eye, took you out, and you resuscitated me. It was an equal deal. Look at your body, Liam said, pointing at the four-tailed fox's physique. You have physical strength, and you get to keep your sea of consciousness. Silence. The kitsune spent a good few minutes looking at her own body, fluttering her tail, and abruptly zooming around the hall in a circular motion. The elders watching were about to attack, but Liam stopped them with a look. The more it ran around the limited space, the happier it looked. It probably never had a run since it went sick. It was stuck inside the dungeon for dozens of years, too, Liam thought. There's more land outside. A full island, Liam said. The kitsune abruptly stopped at Liam firmly. I'll take this as a yes? The kitsune paused. Liam took it as a yes. Chapter 365 Guests. Inside the underground, the meeting was coming to an end. So you were a female after all, right? Liam asked. Silence. The kitsune's eyes suddenly widened with shock. There was an uncomfortable pause. Unlucky, I guess, Liam scratched the side of his head. A moment later, the kitsune burst with laughter. Indeed I am, said the kitsune. Liam clicked his tongue in annoyance. If you got that wrong, I would have ran off to Ikoria no matter what you offered me. Currently, Liam was leading the kitsune outside. Its tails were wagging violently in anticipation for a long run. It couldn't be blamed. Sickness and disabilities often forced certain people down dark and depressive paths. But when it was cured, it was as though color had returned to their lives. It was no wonder why the kitsune accepted Liam's deal. I should give it a name while I'm at it, Liam thought. What do you want to be called? Liam asked as the two walked side by side through the large halls. The kitsune paused. Haven't thought of it. Don't really care, she said casually. Our kind doesn't work on names. We just meow, bark or piss at each other if we want attention. Liam pursed his lips. His naming sense was never good. And quite frankly, he was a bit lazy when it came to this thing. Thus, Liam simply said the first thing that came to mind. Kitsu should be fine. Or maybe Tails. Whatever. Doesn't matter. What are you gonna do now? Liam asked from the side. Freeloading is not an option. You'll be given work, too. Kitsu grumbled in annoyance, but didn't protest. Liam had saved her life and cured her condition. What more could she ask for? Fine, as long as I'm not restricted or looked down upon by other humans, Kitsu said. Eventually, the two were able to make it outside. Without a word, Kitsu bolted forward like lightning. Whoosh! She looked like an apex predator who just learned the thrill that came with hunting prey. And before long, she disappeared into the distance, dashing through the temples and terrorizing the acolytes she passed by. "You sure it's working with us?" Elder Jane said, appearing at Liam's side with a wry look. "It's an actual animal. Not to mention, foxes are known to be mischievous." "It has a mind," Liam corrected as he turned to leave. "And it's smarter than most humans." Liam returned home. With that project finally done, Liam moved to a different task. N/OV-LB.IN. Finishing the rank 5 bodies Ucladd had given him. He was already halfway through eating one of them. Liam's blood was still in the middle tier, but it was close to advancing. Once he arrived at the upper tier, Liam's blood would progress at an incredibly slow rate. "Once I finish these 2 bodies, I'll advance. Then, I'll need roughly 11 rank 5 bodies to advance." Liam pursed his lips. Truth be told, that wasn't an easy amount to obtain. Maybe if Ucladd targets Oceaners instead of people living on land, it'll be far easier. But we've got more pressing matters now. And I still don't have a body tempering method for the 5th rank. Unfortunately, Liam's body was still in the middle tier. For so long. Granted, he was at the peak of the stage, and his physical prowess was already insanely powerful. Paired with chaos, which negated all aura-connected techniques, and corruption, which plagued the insides of someone's body, physical strength was just a side plus. But the only way Liam strengthened his body was through devouring other people. There was only so much that could be done through that method. Even if he ate rank 5s for breakfast, lunch and dinner. For the next 2 weeks, Liam gulped down the rank 5 bodies Ucladd gave him. Then, as he swallowed the last piece of flesh and digested it, Liam's blood started to transform. It seeped further into his bones, muscles and skin. But the last time Liam advanced, he did not have the triumvirate body. Now, the ichor flowing through his veins were like unfiltered water streams. Every corner of his being was filled with blood. Even his nails. 2 hours passed. The process was over. The differences between the middle tier and upper tier were not small. The first thing Liam noticed was how his blood pumped at twice the speed. What did this mean? Besides the faster regeneration, it also meant Liam could maintain his blood bonds for longer periods of time, as well as last longer in a fight. Liam tried sprouting an arm from his back. Squelch. It began as a tentacle, which slowly grew, then split into 5 different fingers. Liam curled the 3rd hand a few times. Although it looked really weird for a hand, it was perfectly usable as one. A moment later, black, fleshy tentacles sprouted from all over Liam's figure, shooting in every direction. The further they went, the thinner they got. Before, Liam had range issues with his tentacles. They couldn't be extended too far, since there wasn't enough blood to be used for those transformations. But now, transfiguration used much less blood. "But I still can't manipulate, double or significantly alter my organs," Liam thought, retracting the tentacles. Expel and admit have gotten stronger, too. There's not enough time to explore more of it, though. Although I want to make a spell or 2 for corruption, there's not enough time. I haven't even tested its limits. Liam sighed. Things were going to get busy, soon. Liam took out his jade and called Ucladd. After a few seconds, Ucladd picked up. "The guests are on their way," Ucladd said. "They'll be here by tonight." Although Liam couldn't see his face, he was pretty sure Ucladd was smirking. "All right," Liam said seriously. "I'll get ready." Who were these guests? Well, the royals of Ikoria, of course. Ucladd needed proof. And although Liam couldn't grant him Nive, he could give proof of her working under the royals. Thus, Ucladd simply extended a friendly invitation to the royals for talks of peace and prosperity. The royals accepted. And now, they were on their way to Alali. Getting this admittance was going to be difficult. But Liam had a feeling it wouldn't be. Chapter 366 Party. As Liam quietly cultivated in front of a mirror, he silently thought of how to go about this meeting. The invitation was an obvious lie. It was a bait. And yet, the Icorian royals accepted. Whether or not they knew it was bait, was a different matter. Obviously, the queen herself was not coming to the party. Even Ucenn's rank 6 prowess could not earn him that privilege. At most, some rank 5s and rank 4 royals would arrive at the meeting. Nothing more, nothing less. Well, at least to Liam's knowledge. And yet, there were a few people that Liam was certain were coming. N-0 Mostly, his old squadron/cohort/classmates. Rin, Nord and Nessa, along with several others. Day by day, their names were gaining popularity and attention, beside other growing individuals. Of course, parties between countries like these were always a pissing contest. Each side would show their greatest talents, and more often than not, there would be a friendly competition between the two parties. The royals would use that chance to further cement their reputation. Liam didn't need to take part in these competitions. In fact, he didn't need to do anything. As the advertised heir of the Eternal Sword, a mere glance and a small talk was more than enough as a requirement. Ucenn would do most of the hard work by stalling the royals for as long as possible. At least, until Liam got proof. What exactly did Liam plan to do? Well, Liam's Bob identity was still not connected to him. The Golden-Eyed Vagrant saga wasn't as infamous and loud as it used to be. Liam was basically a vague rumor now, and the only place he was remembered was the academy, among the students. Obviously, the Royce family and those Liam crossed remembered him quite well, too. Including the royals. Exposing himself now would be risky. On one side, it was his responsibility to obtain proof of Nivea's existence. It was just him that knew her personally, after all. But Liam's special aura made it incredibly difficult. Plus, there was a chance the Icorians could deploy methods of investigation into the party itself. It wasn't like they forgot about Liam. In fact, Liam was sure that they would try to look for him during the party. But despite all this risk, there was a reward. And that was the alliance with Alucard. One had to remember Ucenn's illness. Although it was a bit difficult to think about, he would no longer be there. And Liam would be next in line to lead such a massive force. Right now, the allies of the Temple of Shadow were following Ucenn, not Liam. Ucenn had not announced who his heir would be. At least, not yet. It wasn't the appropriate time. If Liam became a patriarch without approval, nothing stopped the rank 5 clansmen to take over the temple. Even with the temple's superior numbers and forces. Although there was trust between the alliances now, there was no telling who would buckle and crack under political pressure. Currently, there was no rank 5 cultivator working for the Temple of Shadow. Rank 5s were obviously not common. They were strong enough to command battalions of their own. Why would someone like that listen to a mere mortal-ranked cultivator's commands? There was a reason why sector patriarchs were not merging with the temple. If Ucenn's status was permanent, they probably would. But it was not. However, if Liam was to obtain an alliance with the King of Vampires? Something they wouldn't dream of doing? Who would dare question his authority? Nobody. Liam had to be approved. But the issue of maintaining that alliance still remained. Still. As long as the alliance lasts for at least a year or two, they'll come to know my authority. Liam hated this. This whole, pandering to people and seeking approval. But he supposed everyone was caught up in these kinds of situations once they got to a certain point. Certainly, the strongest of the world couldn't avoid it, either. I need to become a zenith already. I've been stuck in these mortal ranks for too long, Liam thought with a sigh. A zenith sea of consciousness was still far away. A zenith core wasn't near, either. A zenith chaos pearl was definitely not near. But Liam had a few tricks up his sleeve to make his task easier. Liam opened his eyes to look into the mirror. I don't have to show myself for the first segment of the party, Liam thought. It should be a good time to scout whoever comes. Slowly, Liam's face transformed. Ever since Liam entered the upper tier of his blood, his transformation abilities were remarkable and more precise. Not only that, but a changed appearance dulled down the Eternal Sword's aura effect. As long as Liam didn't look at people directly, and they were far away, the danger effect would be significantly less. The closest range of effect would be 3 armspans away. Then they'll feel something's off with me. Liam heaved a sigh. First, Liam's skin changed from pale white to olive-tanned brown. Then, Liam's frame grew bulkier, taller and more pronounced. Right after, a nicely trimmed black beard with a few tints of gray rapidly grew on his chin. Followed by that, Liam's hair retracted into his scalp, replaced with a natural white, slicked-back hairstyle that fell over his shoulders in an unkempt fashion. Liam's appearance went from young and cold to aged and hardened. I should blend in with the others now, Liam thought, nodding to himself. Putting on some expensive wrappings, Liam made a few more minor changes to his appearance before leaving. Outside, it was nighttime. Up in the sky, stars came into view. No clouds. A soft, melancholic wind. Hordes of acolytes ran this way and that. Some were on serving duty, while others were still making preparations for the upcoming event. The party would take place at the peak of the island, where the biggest temple was. Liam stood at the highest cliff, overlooking the endless sea raging with waves. Just then, Liam's eyes narrowed. Little silver and golden dots appeared over the horizon, growing bigger as they neared. They're here. Chapter 367 Yacht. Liam's covert king's eye zoomed towards the horizon. The method of transportations the Icorians were using was in line with their signature inscription and formation capabilities. They were flying on luxury air yachts. Made from marble, gold, silver, and other eloquently built materials, radiating with flashy lights. Its frame was way bigger than the most expensive yachts on Earth by a long shot. They weightlessly glided through the air, at a leisurely but steady speed. They looked like diamond clouds with how they hovered over the sparkling ocean. Meanwhile, muffled shouts filled the island's air. The elders were commanding the acolytes to make their last-minute preparation and to get ready. Landing ports were already made specifically to accept the royals, but their impeccable timing caught the temple off guard. Liam ushered himself inside the temple and located the hordes of guards situated throughout the 4 corners of the pyramid. The exterior of the pyramid was like an impregnable fortress, which was partly due to the hordes of acolytes and elders guarding it. Of course, they had to make themselves as relaxed as possible in order not to intimidate the royals. They were guests. The acolytes were hosts. No matter what the purpose behind the meeting was, war was definitely not the intention. Plus, being kind to a guest was deeply rooted in Alalian culture. Liam made his way to the 4th floor. The interior of the pyramid resembled a 5-star hotel. There was a vast, luxuriously decorated ground floor lit by a beautiful crystal chandelier hanging from the ceiling. At the same time, there were 4 floors that went upwards to the pyramidal ceiling, which were visible from the 1st floor. On the 2nd and 3rd floor, a gentle orchestra would perform. As Liam arrived on the 4th floor, a few familiar faces met his gaze. Jargon, Oro, Maeve, Ruth and Krell were there among others, looking battle-ready and war-hardened. One had to remember the hate Alalians harbored for Icorians. Even Jargon hated them with an undying fury due to how Revel was treated by them. Nevertheless, as Liam appeared, the 5 were taken aback. It was clear they didn't realize the full extent of Liam's shape-shifting abilities. After all, not only had Liam changed his looks, it looked as though he had changed the type of person he was. Like there never was a Liam Royce. Just a hard-eyed, menacing mercenary that looked like they'd been through the worst in life. The switch was surreal. The only way they realized it was Liam was due to the Eternal Sword's aura. "What are you all gawking at me for?" Liam asked with a deep voice that matched his menacing face. Jargon was the first to snap out of it. With a wry look, Jargon led Liam to another room. Liam showing his face this early was too risky. Thankfully, there was a special room designed just for that purpose. A glass-made one-way station that could peer outward, but couldn't be peered into. It was situated right above the entrance of the pyramid, and displayed the outside in perfect clarity. N/0 Veld 1N. Liam watched as the cluster of air yachts slowly landed side by side over a patch of clear land. Slowly, golden gangplanks extended past the yachts and descended on the ground. The first to descend the ship was the strongest royal aboard. A rank 5 royal. Liam saw her aura bursting with iridescent rays of light, swirling around her figure like some sort of geyser. She had short silver hair styled to a sharp bob, and golden eyes like all the other Aquarian royals. Even her first name started with a K. But what separated her from the rest was the plain white kimono she wore instead of a beautiful dress. It was like she didn't need looks to vouch for her. She's pretty much the same as all the other royals. Except higher-ranked cultivators naturally have more beauty. Liam knew her as Khazra-Thyris, since Ucladd had been informed of the most important guests to his party. Following her lead, more than a dozen royals descended alongside her. They made sure to walk behind her, though. With their appearances, they looked like celebrities heading to a premiere of some sort. With graceful steps, Khazra arrived at the pyramid's entrance, where Ucladd was waiting for her. With a dazzling smile, the rank 5 royal made a slight nod to Ucladd as a greeting. Ucladd did the same. "Forgive us for being so extravagant," Khazra said gracefully. "It was never our intention to bring so many, but some couldn't resist visiting this beautiful country of yours." Obvious lies. But Ucladd smiled. "Please," he said gentlemanly. "The more the better. There is enough food and drink for all." Then, Ucladd gestured for her and her followers to enter. A moment later, the remaining air yachts opened up, and their occupants made their way towards the entrance. Liam scoffed in amusement. Instantly, he spotted a few familiar faces. Khazra-Thyris. She was there, Ucladd a single day from how Liam remembered. She was a zenith now. Khazra took in the sights with a slightly vigilant expression on her face. A few of his teachers from the academy were there too. But they were happy to be there. At the same time, Liam spotted a few familiar students. Then, past all these people, were 3 figures Liam recognized instantly. The first was Nord. The giant's heir looked matured and unlike how Liam remembered him. His shoulders were broad. His build was sturdy and powerful. His crimson eyes were deep. His short black hair was combed to the side. And his black and red-themed robe suited him quite well. Holding his elbow was a vermilion-haired woman Liam didn't recognize. Then, there was Rin and Nessa, walking side by side. Rin and Nessa both had glow-ups of their own kind. Calling them beautiful was not a stretch. Rin wore a black overcoat that fell over her shoulders. Underneath were black wrappings that covered her from shin to shoulder. She was tall, mature-looking and had a serenity about her. On the other hand, Nessa wore a decorative, full black dress, like some goth woman from Earth. She was on the shorter side, but a coldness seeped from her eyes. But Liam's eye constricted towards Rin's approaching figure. A strange thought surfaced in his mind. She's not human. Chapter 368 Suspicious. Watching the 3 approach the entrance, Liam took a good hard look at each one of them. It had been some time since he saw any familiar faces from his country. At first glance, Nord looked the strongest due to his powerful build. But his aura was incredibly strange. It was swirling with different lines of white and translucent energies. The air of giants, Liam thought. He doesn't look as dumb as he used to. Nord had a rank 3 sea of consciousness, a rank 4 body, and a rank 3 gaseous stage core. Amazingly, Nessa had the strongest centers of power out of all of them. She was a rank 3 magus, a rank 4 body, and a rank 3 liquid stage core. And she was the youngest there. Alchemists, Liam thought with a bit of contempt. Clearly, she had made those advances due to various pills concocted from exquisite materials. Nessa's talent in alchemy was comparable to Liam's talent in murder. And yet, Nessa also had a hardened look in her eyes. Like she knew a thing or two about death. It almost made Liam laugh. Seeing the difference between the meek little girl afraid to hurt someone, and now this. Then, there was Rin. She was not human. That was the thought Liam had of her at first glance. Her aura was a fiery purple hue, silently raging around her. But that wasn't what caught Liam's eye. It was the bestial danger that radiated from her. Liam's eyes widened when he realized something. What did Liam recognize? There was a thin layer of mental energy disguising Rin's violet eyes. It was a rank 4 inscribed item. A hidden device that extended her eyelashes. But Liam's powerful vision could pierce through that easily. What Liam saw behind the disguise were two purple, veiny vertical irises that looked like they belonged to a magical beast. Instantly, Liam thought back to the Corson lands. When the four of them had a small talk among themselves. Rin mentioned a dragon. And her knowledge of magical beasts was far better than Liam's. Not to mention, even her forging method was centered around magical beasts. N-0 Veld 1N. All of this pointed Liam towards one direction. She had become a magical beast herself. Specifically, a dragon type. Liam's eyes narrowed. She was dangerous. Granted, so was everyone else at the party. Only the cream of the crop were allowed into this party. But a magical beast in human form? Kitsu was similar to her. Except, she was a beast with the mind of a human. Rin was a human with the body and anatomy of a beast. Liam himself was partly spirit beast. But just 1/3. And the shifter was not a combat-specialized species. It was useful for camouflage, taking over other beasts, and shape-shifting. But killing was not its forte. Plus, the shifter was just the exterior of his body. Becoming a full human/magical beast hybrid was something Liam had absolutely no clue on how to do, nor plan to. Though, Liam could imagine the amount of experiments and tests needed to make something of that caliber. It far outweighed the mere 421 test subjects, that was for sure. They must have built quite the relationship if the royals wanted to invest this heavily into them, Liam thought. Looking as posh and graceful as they could, the Icorians made their way through the entrance of the luxury temple. Please, Yusin announced to all those present. All eyes were on him. Enjoy yourselves. There are battle halls outside if a friendly spar is to your tastes, or quiet lounges if you do not fancy our music. A long round of applause followed. Yusin with the elders, and Khazra Thyris, along with the other Zenith royals, had already entered a private lounge. That left the Icorians to freely socialize and converse with the Eulalians. From a high vantage point, one could see the distinct differences between the two groups. Academy students were colorful and extravagant, while the temple's forces looked a bit grim and hardened. Still, the Academy students were the first to strike up friendly conversations with those their age. Out of the 18,000 that the temple housed, more than 3,000 of them were in this party. Half of those were young folks below the age of 20. This was obviously done on purpose. Those of a higher age weren't trusted to suppress their hate. And the temple's young were purposely given a vague task to break the ice between them and ease the tension. Slowly, the atmosphere became lively. All kinds of conversations blended together, and laughs soothed over the tension lingering over the air. Liam tracked his classmates as they spread in different directions. The room he was in not only allowed him to see other people without being seen, but to hear them in perfect clarity. Basically, Liam had become the perfect monitor. Nord and, presumably, his girlfriend sat over by a lounge and quietly shared non-alcoholic drinks. They drank in suspicious silence. Quietly, Nessa sat to Nord's left, watching the party with distant blue eyes. Through the king's eye, Liam could tell they were exchanging mental transmissions. But they were being incredibly discreet with it. What are they doing? Liam thought with furrowed brows. Meanwhile, Rin's gaze swept over the main floor, her pupils constricting at seemingly random places. Incredibly suspicious. Just then, a young female acolyte walked up to her with a warm smile, offering her a full glass of Eulalian vinegar. Purple hair. I've never seen a sister with that hair color before, she said with a friendly smile. What's your name, miss? Eulalian vinegar was a drink even Zeniths had trouble swallowing. It burned the throat and made the eyes red. The mischievous acolyte obviously knew this. Rin glanced at the young woman in silence for several seconds, but accepted the drink with a slight smirk. Rin, she answered tersely, gulping down the drink in a second, then heaving a small sigh. I expected something stronger, she added with a disappointed tone. Liam raised his brows slightly, not expecting Rin to answer. But then again, the struggle-tribulation reconstructed the entire body and made it stronger than ever. It was no surprise that she had hearing again, and a mellow voice to add. The acolyte coughed awkwardly, and their conversation suffered an abrupt end. Liam smiled coldly to himself. They're looking for me. Chapter 369 Friend. Like Liam thought, the three were given orders to look for him. Obviously, they were not the only ones. There were thousands of Icorians in this party. Approximately 5,000 people were here at the party. Roughly half of those were Icorians. Royals, teachers, students, servants, and more. Not all the royals present were zeniths. But they still had a certain air of superiority. And not all zenith royals had participated in the meeting with Yusin. One of those that stayed behind were Kaliathyrus, one of Liam's previous teachers. Currently, she was conversing with Elder Jane, who looked just as stunning as every other royal. Both were snarky and passive-aggressive with their words. Liam heaved a long, tense sigh. The royals weren't foolable anymore. They knew Liam was hiding with the Temple of Shadow. They must have thoroughly explored every country as well. At least, those that Liam had access to during that particular time. But they checked off the suspected regions one by one, and there was just one box unticked. And that was Alali. Especially since the seven clans stopped talks with the Icorian royals once the temple was no longer shunned. Which was a bright red flag. Plus, once the requirements of the Eternal Sword's heir came to light, the red flags started to accumulate one after the other. As Liam realized that the royals were not going to give up on him, he made a grim epiphany. Getting found out was inevitable. He had a feeling it would come to this. Sooner or later, Liam's name was going to come into the spotlight. This basically made hiding redundant. Sure, for the time being, it provided safe cover. But it was even more unnerving when the enemy wasn't public with their decisions. If Liam were to somehow be assassinated without his name being public, Icorians could simply say it wasn't them, and the allies of the Temple of Shadow wouldn't be able to retaliate. Sure, the Temple of Shadow would try to fight them. But what would a mere 18,000 do against 1,000,000 or more? There would be less consequences for the Icorians' actions. But if the opposite was true, Liam's enemies would think twice before inciting a war. Not to mention, they'd have Alucard to worry about. And quite frankly, Liam was starting to get frustrated. Hiding like a little rat. He felt like he'd been held back his entire life, and that only flamed his suppressed anger. Why are they so damn adamant about coming after me in the first place? Liam cursed, but an answer came to him anyway. With so much manpower to spare, they could afford to tie up a loose end or two. Nonetheless, there was no use overthinking it. The alliance was the most important aspect of this entire meeting. Looking at the main floor again, Liam saw Nord head to the bathroom. Rin, Nessa, and the red-haired girl also went to the female side of the lavatory. An opportunity. You can begin now, Liam told Jargon with a serious voice, who responded with a quick nod. Using his jade, Jargon made a few commands at the acolytes behind the scenes. An enthusiastic announcement was made on the main floor. A dance was commencing. The tune of music playing in the background changed to something upbeat and rapidly paced. No one had heard such a tune before. It was so fast, rough, and made no sense. They loved it. At the same time, the chandelier's crystalline rays of light dimmed to a dreamy, night blue color. By now, the acolytes of the temple and the academic students pretty much hit it off. And with such a change of mood, they converged at the center of the floor and started dancing in pairs. The grim, hardened colors of the temple and the posh, extravagant colors of the students had now mixed. Liam left the monitoring room with Jargon, Ruth, and Krell, then made his way down the main floor. N/OV-LB.IN. The first floor of the pyramid was huge. Something to accommodate more than 5,000 people was in no way small. From one wall to the other was a distance of 95 meters. They're definitely doing something in the bathrooms, Liam thought. He wasn't worried. The bathrooms had absolutely nothing they could use. Whatever it was, it didn't make a difference. Liam leaned against a pillar and waited patiently. The people around him were sparse. Ruth, Jargon and Krell were nearby, pretending to drink, eat and laugh. Not to mention, elders were watching Liam constantly, ready to cut in if there was ever a need to. Just then, Nord appeared on Liam's side, looking at him incredulously. Silence. For the both of them, the thundering music went slightly muffled. "What are you looking at, kid?" Liam snarled. "Go dance." Nord's jaw just went slack, his eyes twitching with discomfort. Taking a deep breath to calm himself, Nord looked towards those dancing in the center of the main floor. Then, he leaned against the same pillar Liam was leaning on. Although he looked calm on the outside, Liam could see his mental waves raging. "Good. You know," Nord said quietly, a dark look on his face. "I can see people's true forms. Your disguise doesn't hinder my vision like it does the others." Silence. Liam remained quiet. "Still quiet, Nord said with a slight scoff. "Wanna know what your true form is, then?" Silence. Liam was still quiet, like he didn't acknowledge Nord's existence. The music still raged on. People still danced. "In you, I see a four-armed, black, multi-faced demon with 4 horns and a black heart. Only one person I know whose demeanor was as dark as yours." Silence. Liam didn't expect such a response, but Asuras were not four-armed. Liam chuckled contemptuously under his breath. "There you are," Nord said with a hard smile. "You're a hard bastard to find." Silence. "Why the anger?" Liam asked sarcastically, a mocking smile on his face. "I thought we were friends, no?" Nord grimaced, then scoffed. "Be honest. You never thought of me as a friend." Chapter 370 Disgust. Liam chuckled at Nord's statement. The air between them was tense. They had already tuned out the loud music from their heads, creating a fragile silence. Rin and Nessa were still away. Nord looked grim, and Liam could tell the inner conflict he was having from a glance at his mental waves. His thoughts were somewhat of a mess, too. But somehow, to Liam's eyes, they were too complicated to read. Nord's mental waves had a certain, special quality, but Liam couldn't figure out what it was. Clearly, it had something to do with the aura-sensing thing the giants had probably bestowed on him. End.N. A total of 6 seconds of silence followed. "Never expected you of all people to become a lapdog," Liam mocked. "Was it by choice? Or did they promise you a treat?" Nord grimaced, gritting his teeth. "Do I look like a slave to you?" Nord snarled through a clenched jaw. "At least I'm no hiding rat. At least I don't have to live in fear of living another day," he added mockingly. "Or hide behind a mask." Silence. "You were always dumb," Liam sighed pitifully. "Never thought it'd be to this extent, though. Can't you see the leash around your neck? It clinks whenever you move," Liam laughed to himself. Just as Nord was about to loudly respond, the red-haired woman he entered with joined them. "Nord," she asked with confusion in her voice. "Who's this?" Silence. Liam glanced at the woman carefully. Noble birth, looks like. Probably a large-sized family. Assessing her mental waves, he could tell that she had no clue who Liam was. She was genuinely just curious about who her significant other was talking to. In fact, she was sincerely worried for Nord, seeing the sudden shift of his mood. Initially, Liam thought that she might have secretly been working for the royals to keep Nord in line. Surprisingly, he was wrong. But Liam grinned. "Was it her, Nord?" Liam asked with a quiet voice. "Who made the first move? You, or her?" Nord's grimace grew deeper, while his hand twitched. He was restraining himself. But Liam pushed on. "It was her, wasn't it?" Nord's face turned dark. The red-haired woman lightly furrowed her brows. What are you talking about? Liam continued. Maybe you had plans to leave the academy and venture to other lands. But then you became heir to the giants. And you felt like you owed the royals for giving you that opportunity, right? Then she suddenly appeared in your life. Loves you with all her heart, doesn't she? You threw away all plans for love and duty. How romantic, Liam clapped slowly, sarcastically. Do you see where I'm going with this? Liam asked. Enough, the red-haired woman shouted. Who do you think you are? You know nothing about him. Liam ignored her entirely, his condescending gaze still fixed to Nord. Tell me I'm wrong, Nord, Liam asked. Tell me you're not here on a mission. Silence. The red-haired girl looked appalled and enraged, her cheeks flushed red. Nord gritted his teeth. His hands were clenched so hard, blood seeped through his grip. It wasn't like Nord to have so much restraint, which Liam found strange. Bastard, he growled. I swear. One day I'll. One day, Liam asked with chillingly cold eyes. Why not now? Oh, right. The leash. You malicious muv. Just then, Rin arrived with wide eyes at the situation, cutting the conversation short. Liam's piercing gaze slowly moved towards her, leaving Nord and the red-haired girl to their rage. Silence. Rin looked at Nord, then at the red-haired girl, then at Liam. Instantly, she knew what happened. This isn't how I thought a reunion would go between us, Rin said with a slight sigh. At least, not with you resembling that. Liam couldn't read her mental waves at all. They were unstable and jittery. But at the root of it all, Liam could recognize bestial thoughts that belonged to a magical beast, basically confirming his theory of her becoming one. Tell her to stop hiding, Liam told Rin with a serious voice. Rin's lips curved to a subtle smirk. Rin looked towards somewhere in the dancing crowd, and a figure wearing black and white clothing came forward. Nessa looked at Liam with daggers in her eyes. It was as though she was looking at the criminal who murdered her parents. It also looked like she was suppressing her tears. Liam quietly studied her thoughts. When mind-reading, if one emotion was stronger than the rest, it made the ensuing thoughts much easier to read. Emotion obviously had a strong effect on one's thoughts. Anger made one's thinking violent and brash, while sadness made one's thinking filled with despair and lack of hope. And when Liam figured out why Nessa was so angry, it disgusted him to his core. In every sense of the word, this was a reunion devoid of any happiness. Truthfully, Nord didn't think this was how the meeting between them would go. They had missions together. They shared meals. They even shared the same house at one point. But it led to this. Any feelings of friendship Nord may have harbored had died instantly, replaced with bitter anger. Nessa was no different in regard to harboring suppressed hate. But she had no deluded ideas about Liam's personality. But seeing Liam again brought up some dark memories. Though, of all those present, Rin took it the best. She didn't look angry at Liam in the least. She just happened to be on the other side. The red-haired woman was angrily silent, since she wasn't as strong as the group at hand. Now that a total of 5 people had gathered on the scene, some Icorians took notice of the strange commotion. They tried to approach and investigate, but a few temple elders pulled away their focus. Time is running out, Liam thought, inwardly grimacing. I need to get this over with. Soon, this would spiral out of control, and the royals would take notice. It wasn't as though Liam had suddenly gained an urge to insult and break down his former classmates. Albeit, it did feel good. Liam was doing it for a very, very important reason. Nessa took a deep breath to stop her trembling. Liam's cold demeanor, menacing appearance, and powerful presence made her feel insignificant and little. When she tried to speak, Liam instantly cut her off. Spare me the holier-than-thou monologue, child, Liam said with pure distaste in his tone. You disgust me. Chapter 371 Hypocrites. Knowing the reason why Nessa had been so contemptuous towards him, Liam genuinely felt disgust. Why did Nessa hate Liam so much? Because of Gerald's death. Who was Gerald? Liam actually had to rack his brain to remember who that was. But then, a memory flashed through his mind. The Corson Lands mission. Gerald was another party member. A cowardly, weak boy that Liam made the grave mistake of choosing for the mission. During the fight with the blooder, Gerald's right eye socket had been hit with a spiked pole. And that pretty much sealed his fate. Now, what did this have to do with Liam? Wasn't Nessa over that incident? Well, no. She was not. In fact, as time passed, Liam could deduce that it only grew worse. To a point that she was basically haunted by it. Haunted by Liam. That was one of the thoughts Liam picked from her mind. Liam's king's eye connected with her mental sphere. Through her vision, Liam's face was replaced by the blooder's. It was clear that she had some sort of trauma. But blaming Liam? For a death out of his control? For something that happened out of mutual agreement to enter the Citadel? It was beyond pretentious. Upon hearing Liam's words, Nessa flinched. Fear. She was afraid. Her eyes trembled. Liam's cold gaze was unrelenting. Didn't you kill Gerald? Liam suddenly questioned, causing Nessa's eyes to widen with shock. What? She muttered under her breath. Liam tilted his head. You killed him, didn't you? He asked again. Nord wanted to interject, but a bit of bloodlust leaked through Liam's aura, silencing him. You could have saved him, Liam said. He was right beside you when he died, wasn't he? If you had trained your sea of consciousness, you would have had the reflexes to pull him aside before the pole hit. If you trained your body, you could have stopped the pole with your bare body. If you had trained your core, you would have had enough aura to erect a wall of water to slow the pole. If you had trained all three, you wouldn't have been so useless, and the battle wouldn't have taken so long to finish. You could have saved him, Liam repeated with dark eyes. You could have saved him, Nessa. His blood is on your hands just as much as it is on mine. Silence. The more Liam spoke, the more distraught Nessa's complexion became. Her breathing came in quick gasps. Her trembling eyes welled with tears. The red-haired girl and Nord looked enraged, but were unable to say anything. Rin just watched quietly with distant eyes, choosing not to say anything. Liam's words were truth. The spectacle was unignorable now. The students, teachers, and even a few royals witnessed the arguing, making their way to the group. Someone turned that obnoxious music off, an aged professor shouted towards the higher floors. And bring back the lights, damn it. Abruptly, the music stopped. The dreamy blue colors from the chandelier had reverted to the crystalline white. That's the thing with you people, Liam said darkly. Everyone heard that. It wasn't just meant for the closest to Liam. It was for all. Calliothyrus, who'd been in conversation with Elder Jane the entire time, approached with a grave look on her face. Talking down to me like you're somehow superior, Liam continued. His eyes were chillingly cold while controlled anger flared in his chest. Like I owe you an apology for who I am. Suddenly, the air turned sharp, like a silent blade had been unsheathed somewhere. Like I should bend backwards and let you kill me, just because I didn't let you do the same. The elders descended from their watchpoints and arrived at Liam's side. The Icorians were forced to stand apart from the temple's side. Once paired together like friends, they were now separated like enemies. You're all hypocrites, Liam snarled with disgust as his gaze swept the room. Eventually, Liam's piercing gaze connected with Kalia, whose eyes widened with realization at who she was speaking to. The disguise did little to hide the bloodlust. You of all people should know that, right, Miss Kalia? Liam asked her rhetorically. The lovely mission you sent us 5. Tell me you people didn't kill the girl we brought back, Liam abruptly questioned Kalia, who didn't respond. Liam scoffed derisively. Like I though. Nive is alive, you prick. Abrupt silence. Nord said those words, and Kalia's face fell in an almost hilarious fashion. But it wasn't just her face that fell. Although most students and teachers had no clue what was going on, the royals clearly did. And Nord just admitted the existence of a foreigner working under their roof, just to have a comeback to Liam's vicious insults. Realizing his blunder, Nord's face fell too, turning paler than milk. Liam blinked. Was it that easy? Was that it? Slowly, Liam's lips curled to a vicious grin. Then, he chuckled under his breath. Then, he laughed as loud and condescending as he could. It was actually genuine, too. A backroom opened. Ucladd and Darius, along with a dozen royals, left it. Ucladd smiled. Darius frowned, shooting him a chilling glare. She realized this was all a setup from the beginning. The talks between them clearly bore no fruit. Liam's face cracked, and his entire body underwent transformation after transformation. A moment later, he had become Bob again, but not Liam. From his pocket, Liam flicked up a stone chip in his hand, caught it, then made it expertly twirl in between his fingers. Hurt enough? Liam asked, but not those present at the party. I don't think I can insult them any longer without this turning into a battle. Silence. Loud and clear, a dark, crisp voice echoed from the chip. I've been given all the proof I need. We'll speak face to face, soon. Until then, the Corson lands stand in alliance with the Temple of Shadow, end.He. A moment later, under everyone's incredulous gaze, the stone chip turned to smoky wisps of ash. Chapter 372 Vial. Hearing the word Ucladd, some people in the room felt their bowels loosen up a bit. The king of vampires? The Pasha? The so-called progenitor of vampires? That person became a direct ally of the temple? Why? How? When? Well, just now, but in the minds of those present, it was as though this was pre-planned years prior. Liam took a deep breath. It wasn't like him to get angry. In a sense, it was an act. But at the same time, it felt incredibly satisfying putting down the mask. At least, for now. Liam had switched to his Bob identity for a reason. He hadn't displayed himself as Liam. But, what was the point? The royals already knew it was Liam Royce who was speaking to them, after all. However, it was still bound to create some semblance of confusion and disorder amidst their deductions. And Liam would use any opportunity he could get. They'll make sure my name gets out there soon enough. I'm just delaying the inevitable by a little bit longer. Instantly, the air inside the pyramid grew incredibly hostile. The students felt betrayed by their new friendships. The royals felt like their authority had been stepped on. The teachers felt like their knowledge had been stolen. This entire invitation was a middle finger rubbing against their faces. And most of all, the safety of their country was threatened by the alliance of these two malicious forces. And the temple had given Ucladd both proof and reason why a declaration of war was a good idea. Ikoria was the one who began the whole charade in the first place, after all. I'm disappointed, Darius said in a quiet, dark voice, yet it reached the ears of all those present. All this for a pouty tantrum that could have been done over a jade, she added disdainfully. Liam took no offense, even allowing a mocking smirk to reach his face. Inwardly, she and all the other royals were horribly seething inside, not that Liam could read her emotions or her thoughts. This entire situation would be a black mark on her CV for centuries to come. You may leave now, Liam said, waving his hand dismissively at Darius. The perfume here is intoxicating. Silence. Did Liam just order around a royal? The students and teachers felt a pang of shock. But the temple acolytes only felt their respects rise for Liam. You heard my air, Ucladd echoed, flashing a smile. I sincerely hope you all enjoyed the night. Silence. Air? At once, all the temple acolytes, from disciple to elder, felt their jaws go slack. Ever since they knew of Ucladd's sickness, they'd shed tears night and day for the patriarch's sake. But they'd also worried about who would lead them next. Liam was always a possibility, but he was too young, and still wasn't a zenith. Darius, Jane, or Arisa were prime candidates. But now, Ucladd was perfectly fine with declaring him as the next in line. Darius smiled coldly, but didn't move on Liam's command. A little egoist with a superiority complex, she said with a graceful laugh. Enjoy your time while it lasts. Although it may have seemed like she said that to just Liam, she was talking to Yusin and the temple as a whole. Wordlessly, she gracefully made her way to the door, only to look over her shoulder at Liam. One more thing, she said with a slight smile. About your teachers. Liam hid a frown, but his face turned colder. Rogan and, who else? Right. Lloyd Call, she continued, utterly unfazed by the sharp glares shot her way from every direction. Both had their mental spheres shattered, n/0 veiled 1n. Silence. Liam's eyes narrowed chillingly. The air around him turned frigid despite Liam's restraint. Kazra smiled and scoffed lightly. A painful way to go out, that. Even worse than a blade through the heart. Subsequently, their entire lineage has been wiped off the face of Ikoria. Disappointing, Kazra tooted, making her way out. As her voice went distant, she repeated her words once more. Disappointing. The bitter students and enraged teachers followed closely. Nord escorted Nessa, but not before sending one last deathly glare towards Liam's direction. With his gaze alone, it was clear he intended for revenge. Rin lingered for a second, staring at Liam with a strange glimmer in her violet eyes. She gave him a single nod, before heading for the door. Like that, the grim party organized for peace and prosperity, only carved the way for war and death. Wordlessly, Liam headed to his private quarters. No one stopped him. They felt as though a blade might cut them down if they tried. Liam had to arrange and organize his thoughts. Sitting on the floor of his room, he closed his eyes in cultivation. His closest teachers. Dead. Rogan and Lloyd. There was always that thought in the back of Liam's mind. Of them suffering the consequences of his choices. But there was always a thought in the back of his head that denied all of that. Liam's mind went a little distant, and his face turned solemn. But then again. They died for a purpose. For his goal. For him to get stronger. For him to carry on their flames. People expressed grief differently. Some cried. Some raged. Some resorted to a vice to ease their pain. Few were patient. But Liam was past grief. The lives of cultivators usually varied. Some didn't make it past a few years of starting it. Others lasted hundreds of years. Because of that, most of them processed grief in strange ways. For Liam, inflicting the most disgusting, vile torture unknown to man would fully suffice. And knowing Rogan, Lloyd, Revel, and Eve, they wouldn't convince him otherwise. Heaving another breath, Liam finished with his cultivation and headed towards Yusin's estate. It didn't take long for him to arrive at his room. Done thinking things over? Yusin asked as Liam entered. Sorry about what happened to them, by the way. Liam waved a hand. It's fine. Just needed a minute. A pause. Have they come yet? Liam asked. Still waiting. Should be here any minute though, Yusin said, leaning back in a lofty chair with a mug of ale in his hand. Never thought you had a serpent's tongue, Yusin added with a slight laugh. Liam didn't respond, finding a chair to sit on and wait. Since the alliance was now going to be public, it was no longer a requirement to be secretive. The king of vampires himself was coming for a chat. Chapter 373 Skeletal Dragons. Ucladd could freely travel under the sun. As it turned out, sunlight didn't actually reduce him to ash, like it did to lower-ranked vampires. If that wasn't the case, the alliance didn't mean anything. After all, what use was an alliance with someone whose greatest enemy was a bit of vitamin D? That being said, Liam didn't know if that was the case with all the other vampires, but it had to be. Although Yusin had requested 18,000 in support, those numbers could easily be altered to compensate for power differences. One rank 4 vampire was probably worth 250 acolytes or even more. It all depended on what they could provide for the cause. So, how do you want to go about this, exactly? Liam asked Yusin. He was referring to the attack on the Dual Empire, which was still ongoing. "We can't just drop in the middle and hope everything works out," Liam said. "Well," Yusin said, scratching his beardless chin in thought, "the dual empire fights in unique ways. From what I know, the Emperor of Courage fights using just his body. And by extension, so does everyone in his empire. Which, by the way, consists of only men." Well, that was strange. But then again, the dual empire really took thematics to a new level. Both their colors, societal ranking systems, and power starkly contrasted with each other. Even the names did. The Emperor of Fear is the complete opposite. All her forces are women, and they fight using, well, fear. Liam pursed his lips pensively. That was incredibly strange. And this entire dual empire thing was weird. Why start a war now? Was a lover's quarrel really the reason for all of this? It just seemed a bit pitiful in Liam's eyes. "No, they'll be in," Yusin continued. "Also, they use vile creatures called abominations, which come in monstrous, inhuman forms." Yusin took a swig of ale. Liam raised a brow. He'd never heard of that term before. "Abominations?" he asked. Yusin nodded firmly. "Abominations," he repeated. "Birthed by the Empress of Fear herself." Silence. Liam raised a hand before Yusin continued. "Birthed?" Liam asked. "Like?" Yusin shrugged with a slight laugh. "You never know. Rumors are rumors, though." Liam sighed. Every day, the world was getting weirder. "Either they're incredibly huge, or pathetically small," Yusin said, his shadows merging together in the air to form a disgusting, vicious-looking creature. It was a mix between a centipede and a spider. It had the same number of eyes as it did legs. Think magical beast, but one made from nightmares. "It's that bad?" Liam asked skeptically, his brow arched. "It is," Yusin confirmed. "If it's just about fear, can't someone just not be afraid?" Liam asked. Yusin shook his head. "Not that simple. It's not about fear in a literal sense. You don't have to touch fire to feel its heat." Liam hummed in understanding. "It's sort of like that," Yusin explained. "Not to mention, it affects all 6 senses. Not only is it a physical thing, it's also mental. Though, if your mental fortitude is strong enough, you'd be able to resist most of its effects. Then again, this is all second-hand information. I haven't been there myself." A short pause ensued. Liam hummed to himself thoughtfully. As he thought, fear was indeed an amazing weapon. But the Empire of Fear had utilized it in a new form. Abominations. It had a nice ring to it. "Not to mention, their lands are just as dangerous," Yusin said. "Infused with abominations and death traps. All gateways to both empires are densely guarded by rank 5s. Liam nodded. This wasn't going to be simple, unlike infiltrating the Corsan lands. In the first place, the reason that was so easy to do was because of the lack of security, which Ucladd had promptly taken care of, anyway. "I'm sensing a but in there," Liam said. Yusin nodded. "Although it's not easy, if we kidnap a dual empire soldier, we could siphon him or her for info." Siphon. Neat way to say torture, Liam had to admit. Though, we'd have to do that with the vamps. "This is no walk in the park," Yusin said. Liam was about to nod, when the sounds of wings flapping entered his ears. "They're here," Yusin said, heading outside. Liam followed him to the cliff where the ocean met the island. Unlike the Aquarians, who resembled golden and silver dots over the horizon, the Corsans were just black. Liam expected bats to be the method of transportation used by the vampires. Plus, he expected at least 1,000 of them. Neither of the two predictions came true. Skeletal dragons. Dragons, except consisting only of bone and ligaments, were flying towards the island at a deceptively fast speed. There was no flesh or organs in or out of their skeletal frames. Besides their bones having a glamorous sheen, their massive ribs and eye sockets were see-through. 2 crude horns protruded from the top of their pointy skulls. Even their bony, almost spiky wings had no membrane. Wherever they flew by, ocean waves raged tumultuously. Liam raised his brows in amazement. As far as magical beasts went, this was possibly the most amazing of them all. Besides the rank 6 sea creature Liam encountered, of course. There were just a dozen of these skeletal dragons, with the biggest belonging to the Pasha himself. The monolith of a creature spanned more than 16 meters horizontally, with streamlined features and red, eyeless sockets. Before long, shrieks and roars of amazement resounded within the island. No one had seen something like that before. It was as though they'd found out dogs can talk. Never seen that one before, Ucladd said, clearly just as amazed as Liam was. They've been hiding the good stuff, Liam answered. Some sort of ancient magic? He asked. Ucladd shrugged blankly. Neither of them knew. Hope they brought one for me, Ucladd laughed under his breath. And soon enough, the dragons arrived at the island, perching atop Ucladd's giant pyramid one by one. Chapter 374 Redirection Cloak. Ucladd stood over his skeletal dragon and smiled, looking down at Liam and Ucladd. With a slow, gliding descent, he arrived in front of them. His appearance and attire was completely different. Instead of a suit, he wore a layered black robe, which looked more of an overcoat above other pieces of clothing. It covered him shoulder to shin, while gray underlayers were tightened by a red sash at his waist. In a sense, it looked ancient, and fit the Pasha quite well. Instead of looking like an old man with snow-white hair, Ucladd looked young again. As though barely 20 years old. It was uncanny. The beard was also trimmed and shortened. Its color had also reverted to black. And it was now a goatee. On the other skeletal dragons, vampires which Liam recognized as ministers jumped over and landed on the ground. Novel bien. Shall we begin? Ucladd said with a gentlemanly smile. In a well-decorated meeting room, a large, circular table was situated right in the center. Those sitting around such a table had contrasting appearances. Half the table had pale, ashen skin, paired with sharp, crimson eyes and various styles of white hair. The other half consisted of hard-eyed, ornately tattooed individuals wearing black wrappings. 12 vampires. 12 elders. And one giant, four-tailed fox. Currently digging its giant maw into a tiny bucket filled with krill and fish. Except Ucladd, the 11 vampires around Liam were strange-looking people. There were only 7 ministers at the meeting. The Minister of Economy. The Minister of Torture. The Minister of Defense. The Minister of Security. The Minister of Trade. The Minister of Magic. And finally, the Minister of Transportation. There was just a brief introduction to all these ministers. The Minister of Economy was the blinged-out, elegantly dressed woman. The Minister of Torture was a tall, slim, shifty man with a scarred face. His left eye had a twitch, which made it look like he was blinking constantly. The Minister of Defense was the muscular, sturdy man with a military haircut. The Minister of Security was a severe, bald, stoic-looking man with a goatee and an average build. The Minister of Trade was a beautiful woman with long, black-dyed hair and long eyelashes. The Minister of Magic was a short, surprisingly young man with a wooden staff in his hand. All things considered, he looked like a wizard, minus the hat. And finally, the Minister of Transportation was an old, smiling woman with slitted eyes. The rest were not ministers, but strong individuals under Ucladd's hand. But the 2 strongest of them were Blood Fong and Blood Claw. Ucladd looked at the fox with a scrutinizing, subtly annoyed gaze. Crunch. Crunch. Chomp. Crunch. Gulp. Wet chomping noises resounded inside the meeting room. Ucladd ignored it. And out of respect for their king, the ministers didn't say anything, either. Though, they looked pretty annoyed. First, I'll begin with a thank you, Ucladd said with a light smile, nodding towards Ucladd and Liam. You've exposed a snake in the grass. Granted, it was for the sake of an alliance, but no matter. Liam and Ucladd responded back with a nod. Alucard looked towards a lady glimmering with all kinds of eloquent jewelry. The Minister of Economy. Liam had no clue why she of all people arrived at this meeting. After all, economies between countries were different. What was usable in Corsa was not usable in Alali, and vice versa. The economic minister snapped her fingers. With a flash of red light, a wide, crude-looking black cloth appeared on the table. More precisely, in front of Liam. A token of appreciation, Alucard said with a subtle nod. It's called a redirection cloak. Try it on. Liam raised a brow. He picked it up and took a closer look at it. At first glance, it looked like any other cloak. In fact, it looked a bit dirty and unappealing to the eye. But with the king's eye, Liam could tell there was something different about it. There were faint traces of red essence running across its surface, only Liam couldn't tell what it was. Some sort of blood, Liam thought. Blood isn't like that, though. Liam must have been gazing at the thing for too long, since the ministers were sending him subtle glares. I'll study this on my own. Liam threw the cloak over his back. It stuck to his shoulders on its own, like some sort of coat. However, it draped over his entire figure, and not just his back. From shoulder to shin, he was covered. There was even a hood for his head. However, his arms could freely poke through the front of it. All things considered, it didn't look too bad on him. To the outside eye, Liam exuded a sense of unease and silent danger. Paired with the shadows darkening around him, he looked like a mysterious figure. A reaper, almost. Is it fine if Lisha attacks you? Alucard asked. Liam raised his brows. She's not suited for strength. Lisha was the economic minister. However, she was basically the equivalent of a rank 4 cultivator, unlike the rest, which were rank 5. That wasn't something light, Liam nodded at the request anyway. Lisha smiled. A large cloud of crystallized blood gathered between her palms, which she clapped together. Splush. Fast. A compressed, sharp-tipped pole shot towards Liam at an incredible speed. His body acted on instinct. Reflexively, Liam grabbed the hem of his cloak and flicked the pole away as soon as it reached him. Cling. Liam's eyes widened. As soon as the arrow-like pole made contact with his cloak, it just deflected it. The arrow was sent towards the roof, where it... Bang! Liam raised a brow. Truth be told, he was amazed. Is this just with blood? Liam asked, touching the spot where the arrow made contact with. There was not a scratch on its fabric. But the blackish color had turned slightly white where it hit. No, Alucard answered with a proud smile. But fire weakens it. Also, you'd be wise not to deflect the same attack on the same place. It's not unterrible. Liam nodded appreciatively. Thank you. I'm definitely studying this, Liam thought to himself. Ucladd loudly coughed into his fist, catching the attention of everyone inside the room. Where's mine? Chapter 375 Improvisation. The redirection cloak was, in Liam's words, amazing. Well, his chaos didn't need to redirect spells. It basically negated it. But this was comparing apples and oranges. The cloak didn't run on fuel. It was a piece of cloth. In response to Ucladd's comment, Alucard lightly laughed. They don't make them your size, friend. Friend. Although Alucard called Ucladd a friend, that was more of a respective term. Right now, the alliance between the Temple of Shadow and the Pasha was platonic. They were associates. Not friends. Plus, Alucard knew of Ucladd's sickness. Soon, there would not be an Ucladd. However, he also knew Liam would take his place. When that happened, Liam didn't know for sure how Alucard's personality might change. Powerhouses had their own things to worry about. Granted, Ucladd was perhaps the oldest powerhouse in the world, due to the peculiar way their species aged and grew stronger. Their bodies naturally progressed with time. And the older they got, the slower their progression was. One could imagine how long the progenitor of vampires needed to make a breakthrough. Thus, Liam could see how Alucard saw no losses in joining forces. Sooner or later, this too would die out. But the real reason rested with Alucard alone. Ucladd waved a hand at Alucard's comment. Clearly, he was joking. "I'd do well with one of those dragons, instead," Ucladd said with a smirk. Alucard briefly laughed. "Sorry to say, but they aren't dispensable. Each one of them takes several decades to make." Silence. Make, Liam thought, hiding a bit of shock that almost appeared on his face. Liam thought those skeletal dragons were birthed in the Corson lands. As though they were special magical beasts of some kind. Clearly, he was wrong. Having the ability to construct creatures like that. Liam thought. I'm pretty sure he has an army of those things just lying around. Though, that didn't explain why Alucard felt so lax about sharing that info. Calling it a slip of the tongue was incredibly stupid. This was Alucard. People just stopped counting his age at a certain point. Thus, no one knew how long he really lived. The amount of experience, knowledge and understanding that such a person had accumulated throughout the years was unfathomable. The man started out as a leech. At least, it was rumored. Is he underestimating our forces? Liam thought with a neutral face. No, he has every right to. Or maybe he's trying to build trust. Either way, information was good, and Liam couldn't complain. Ucladd smiled lightly. Never mind that. We can start the discussions now. The meeting room's atmosphere turned serious. Alucard and Ucladd exchanged a firm nod. Shadows paired with inscriptions formed around the room, creating another layer of privacy. Bringing down the dual empire, Ucladd said with hardened eyes. That's our goal. Silence. This was the first time Ucladd spoke of his plans. Alucard hummed pensively to himself. For several seconds, no one spoke. The ministers were quietly looking at their king for a response. Kitsu just continued feeding on the bucket of fish, which somehow still hadn't finished. I had a feeling it was about that, Alucard said with a slight frown. But this isn't the first time this has happened. Ucladd's eyes visibly widened. So did Liam's. What? Ucladd asked, incredulous. It's just something they do, Alucard laughed out loud. It's the way those two have always been. Their lovers' quarrel is a bit eccentric. They wage war out of spite. Granted, this time it's on a much grander scale. Silence. Liam was completely taken aback. I remember them quite fondly, Alucard continued, scratching his chin pensively. Back when they were rank 5 zeniths, they overthrew the rank 6 emperor that used to rule those lands. This time, Kitsu stopped eating from her krill bucket and stared at Alucard with wide eyes. I still remember how my jaw fell to the floor when I heard that, Alucard said, suddenly serious. The emperor wasn't the strongest person back then. Heck, he was an old coot. Pot calling the kettle black. But he wasn't weak, that was for sure, Alucard said. I personally still have no idea how they managed to pull that off. Ucladd lowered his head with an alarmed, slightly dark look. Getting revenge looked more distant now. More dangerous and less likely. How many people could boast about killing a powerhouse as a zenith? Just 2, Liam supposed. Granted, Ucladd always knew it was going to be incredibly hard to do. But this was a bitter reality check that left a bad taste in his mouth. Do you still wish for war? Alucard asked Ucladd with a serious voice. It seemed that even Alucard wasn't a fan of needlessly exposing himself against powerful enemies. Silence. They pulled it off because they were together, Liam said suddenly. The room's attention fell on him. Usually, Liam was silent in times like this. Liam was inexperienced with these sorts of meetings. He was basically an intern learning the ropes. Plus, he was weaker compared to the rest. And his words held less weight as a consequence. But Ucladd was taking too long to answer. If they brought down the emperor, it's because they did it together, Liam said. Liam shrugged. They're not together now. What stops us from making their relationship worse? Silence. Interesting way to put it, Ucladd chuckled lightly. Your plan? A small pause. Ucladd looked at Liam with an arched brow. If this is a common occurrence, then these people are clearly not fit for each other. Not that Liam had any relationship advice to give. What stops us from weakening them from within? They don't have to know their country is being invaded. Clearly you didn't, Liam thought. But what he said was, half of us could go to the Empire of Courage, and the other half could go to the Empire of Fear. From there, we could break down their forces as much as we can. If the powerhouses notice, you two could swoop in and kill them there. Silence. No/I'll be in. The Minister of Security and Defense looked surprised. Then, they looked at their king with approving gazes. Ucladd stroked his beard. Interesting, he said. Not too bad. Ucladd looked at Liam with a broad smile, suppressing a laugh. Was that all improvisation? Ucladd transmissioned silently. Liam hid a smirk. Every word. Chapter 376 Plan. Liam, Ucladd, the elders, the ministers, and Ucladd continued the discussions. Everyone took their time discussing the minute details that came with such a plan. Since our forces are being split up, we'll have to decide who goes where, Ucladd said. My people have no special preference. The Empire of Fear and Courage are equally powerful. One fights with fear and abominations, and the other fights with bare fists and resolve. We could either mix our forces, or split in half. Choice is yours. Ucladd pursed his lips. Although the Empire of Fear sounded much more powerful, Liam knew this wasn't the case. The Empire of Fear depended on, well, fear. They weren't strong physically. They were like beast tamers who depended on their companion to weaken their opponent. Or inscription masters who depended on artifacts and items. On the other hand, the Empire of Courage fought with just their bare bodies. One could imagine how powerful they had to be to rival the Empire of Fear in strength. In fact, one could argue they were even more powerful due to achieving such a level of power with just sheer physicality. At the end of the day, either one was formidable in their own way. What do you think? Ucladd relayed to Liam. Although the choice ultimately depended on Ucladd, Liam was the next in line. Giving his decisions more weight could help cement his authority with the temple. Liam thought about it carefully. Splitting our forces would be much better. The vampires won't listen to my orders obediently. Plus, we could always keep in touch through Jades. Regarding the decision of where to go, Liam fancied the Empire of Fear more. After all, Liam always thought fear was a good tool. Heading to the Empire to learn it on a deeper, intenser level wasn't a bad idea. Plus, abominations. Liam could study them. It was more of a genuine curiosity than anything solid. Though, Liam's blood bonds could use a few improvements. No/I'll be in. Truth be told, the blood bonds weren't particularly strong. It used too much blood, and sustaining the bonds for long wasn't feasible. Maybe abominations could prove otherwise. 2 seconds of silence passed. Liam relayed the decision to Ucladd, who said it out loud. Ucladd nodded. A short pause. To make it clear, we cannot help in the kidnapping aspect, Ucladd said firmly. We're heading there on our own. Ucladd raised a brow. Why not? He asked. Our method of transportation, Ucladd said, referring to the skeletal dragons. Unless stealth is not a priority? Ah. Indeed, that was a problem. Worry not, Ucladd reassured. We have a workaround. Ucladd glanced at the Minister of Transportation, prompting her to lay something down on the table. It was a rectangular, stone tablet. Crude writings were on its surface, which resembled runes. However, the slab of stone was precisely rectangular, with no soft edges. It looked as though it held something else inside. A world gate, Ucladd said proudly. One-of-a-kind relic of the past that allows teleportations between incredibly long distances. That includes Corsa to the Dual Empire. The words lingered in the air. Yusin's eyes widened. Liam's brows raised. Kitsu went back to her krill bucket. What was so special about long-distance teleportation? Weren't there already teleportation platforms? There were. However, they were significantly inferior. Teleportation platforms were incredibly feeble, and had demanding conditions before it was up and running. One of those was distance. At a distance of 500 meters, depending on how complex the platform was, the device would just stop working. More importantly, over water, it wouldn't function, since the platforms needed to be connected with each other. Thus, an artifact like this was absolutely priceless. If Ucladd was lying about it being one of a kind, he did a magnificent job at it. Blinking long distances was more priceless than one could imagine. All you have to do once you arrive there is put the slab on a flat, stone surface, Ucladd said. We'll do the rest. Yusin nodded, storing the tablet. I can also provide maps, Ucladd said. They're old. More than a few centuries, but they could show you where to go. The smiling Minister of Transportation snapped her fingers, and 2 parchments appeared on the table. One for the Empire of Courage. And the other for the Empire of Fear. They were in tatters, with aged, barely understandable ink on their surface. Tendrils of shadow swallowed the maps from the table. I suppose we're done, now? Ucladd asked. Yusin nodded. We are. We'll begin within this month. Ucladd, Yusin and Liam rose to their feet. Only then did the ministers and elders do the same. The power dynamic was clear. The group of 24, plus the fox, headed outside. We'll be taking our leave, then, Ucladd said, snapping his fingers at the largest skeletal dragon. Whoosh! The sound of bones clicking together echoed as the dragon flew to his feet and lowered its head for Ucladd to hop on. It's been a pleasure, Yusin said with a small smile. All mine, Ucladd responded similarly, before his bony beast rose into the air. A powerful gust of wind was produced as a result. With that, the remaining ministers perched atop their dragons and flew off into the distance. Liam's eyes turned hard. You saw the way the Minister of Torture looked at me? Liam said with a slightly cold tone. I don't like that. Yusin just laughed. It was happening. War. At least, it was going to happen. Though, Liam's mission was akin to espionage more than it was pure combat. But the final result was going to be war. Of course, Liam needed a few weeks to get prepared for something of this caliber. If it was up to him, Liam would take several months. But Yusin's health was deteriorating. Liam had several ideas he wanted to test out first. But they weren't long-term things. First, was something involving his Ashura form. Specifically, his gauntlets. Ever since Liam's Chaos Pearl had advanced to rank 3, his Ashura form wasn't feasible anymore. It ran through Liam's Chaos reserves too fast. Despite that, it was incredibly powerful. However, Liam wanted to do something else with it. Liam wanted to make a sword from the gauntlets themselves. Chapter 377 Battle Body. Liam's Chaos Pearl raged in his solar plexus. A wave of heat spread across his body. Liam's skin tightened. Before, Liam's skin would grow shiny and more pronounced. But with the triumvirate body, it was different. Now, it would just tighten as much as possible to produce the same hardening effect. 4 muscular arms grew out of his sides, armored with aureate gauntlets that looked even better last Liam saw them. Making a sword out of something like this? How sharp would it be? Though, Liam didn't limit it to a sword. It could be anything. A dagger, a rapier, a saber. The important part was making it work. First, Liam tried using transfiguration to transform his gauntlet into a sword. Since Liam's blood was in the upper tier, the transformation abilities had also spread to his Ashura form. One of Liam's gauntlets liquefied slightly, slowly flowing across his arm to reach his hand. However, Liam realized it couldn't condense or extend past his arm. Liam clicked his tongue. Plan B it is. Plan B was a little more brutal. Liam gripped his top left gauntlet with all 5 hands. Then, he pulled with all his strength. A deep, low growl echoed from Liam's throat. Pain assaulted his arm. The gauntlet was a part of his body. An extension of it. Like skin was to flesh. Liam exerted more and more force until what came out was a deafening roar. Rip! Liam's arm was crudely ripped off along with the gauntlet. Milk-white blood sprayed everywhere, flowing into a puddle beneath Liam's feet. But the ripped-off arm with the gauntlet was in his grip. Liam heaved a long sigh, closing the wound with his transfiguration. The pain was gonna linger for a bit, but that was fine. At least he got the gauntlet, plus the arm. With that done, Liam undid his transformation. The extra arms regressed into Liam's sides. It felt as though a part of him was missing. Liam's face turned incredibly pale. Slowly, the puddle of pearly white blood changed color. It was reverting back to a crimson red. Huh? A bad feeling grew in Liam's chest. The ripped-off arm in Liam's hand started to transform. The gauntlet was slowly melting into the arm, as though it was butter on a hot skillet. Silence. Minutes passed as Liam just stared blankly at the arm. A loud curse escaped Liam's mouth. He ripped off an arm for nothing. Absolutely nothing. Liam threw the arm away. It was pointless eating it. After all, it was the same as eating one's hand and expecting to grow because of it. Liam heaved a long sigh. Truth be told, he didn't expect this. The plan to make a gauntlet sword was scrapped instantly. At least, for now. Maybe it's because I'm still half human. Liam sighed again. At least I can study the cloak now. Liam took out the redirection cloak and examined it. Subtle red energies coursed through its fabric like veins of blood. Till now, Liam hadn't identified what it was. And an hour of tinkering, examining, and testing later, he still hadn't figured it out. Either Ucladd made it, or the Minister of Magic did. It's beyond my understanding either way. Then, Liam moved to his last and final idea. But it was quite difficult. What Liam wanted to do was permanently alter his physical form. Not a human form, not an Ashura form, something else. How would Liam accomplish this feat? Simple. By using expel over and over, then directing where his body reformed. Through that method, however Liam regenerated, it would stay that way permanently. The arm deformity gave him the idea. But, wouldn't that take long? Exploding, regenerating, exploding again. It would. Not to mention, it would be incredibly painful. However, Liam had a cheat code. The rank 5 corpses. By devouring them as he regenerated, Liam could recover the lost blood, then use it to speed up the healing process. Using admit wasn't viable. Liam tried. The flesh of a rank 5 cultivator basically refused to enter his body. However, the current plan worked just fine. Something that makes my fighting style easier to access, Liam thought, imagining a battle body suited just for him. But also something that I could flick on like a switch. I can't walk around looking like an alien. Liam drummed his fingers across his forehead, thinking deeply about what the best physical form could be. Something that allows me to use void, chaos and corruption. But doesn't restrict my swords either. Something with both power and speed. Silence. That sounds familiar. Silence again. end.O//V, E-/L-B-/1-/N. Realization hit him. Isn't that just my Ashura form? Liam fell into laughter. But the more he thought about it, the more sense it made. The Ashura was built for war and combat. They were warriors, in a sense. Liam went pensive for a few minutes. I think I got it, Liam thought suddenly, a smile broadening on his lips. I don't need 6 arms. I just need 4. 2 for my blades, 2 for chaos and corruption. I could also make void with the black hole and chaos, and I can do it without being defenseless. With transfiguration, I could also hide those 4 arms at will. Plus, I could add little modifications myself. Transforming his body was vastly different than manipulating it. Even now, Liam could pull his limbs into his torso, like a turtle retracting into its shell. And although precisely manipulating his body to grow arms was incredibly difficult, through this method, it was perfectly possible. It was like molding soft clay and letting it harden. It was perfect. Liam wasted no time. He took out the 2 rank 5 bodies. Then, he boom, got to work. Flesh exploded on his hips, causing a rumbling shockwave to spread across his quarters. Blood sprayed everywhere. Liam was ragdolled to the wall. With a scowl on his face, Liam ran to the bodies and took a large bite from it. Then, he boom. This was going to be a long week. Chapter 378 Monster. For the entirety of the next week, a constant stream of explosions echoed from Liam's quarters. Every single minute. The temple acolytes were genuinely concerned. These explosions weren't gentle. They were bombs. And it didn't stop. Day and night, it was unrelenting. There were privacy inscriptions layered around Liam's quarters. In fact, they cancelled out the thunderous booms and bangs completely. However, it didn't negate vibrations or tremors. Those near Liam's quarters hadn't enjoyed a good night's sleep for a week due to being bolted awake. But finally, it stopped. Finally. There was a round of cheers that day. And also, curiosity. Why were there so many explosions in the first place? They had to investigate. Thus, a small group of low-ranking acolytes daring enough decided to sneak into his residence. Plus Ryu. He organized everything. Due to Liam's status as the next in line, his home was placed right next to Yusin's. But with Ryu's help, they sneaked past the elders and arrived at his doorstep, ready to knock. To Ryu's surprise, other elders were already there. They were just as curious as him. But just then, Liam himself had walked out. And those present, including Ryu himself, gasped with a mixture of fear, surprise, and shock upon seeing him. 4 muscular arms. Streamlined body. Claw-like, bony hands. Long black nails, each nail sharp enough to cut through metal. Small black tentacles extended from his back, squirming and writhing on their own. What was this? The lower-ranking acolytes couldn't stop themselves from running away. At the same time, when Liam came out, a palpable stench of blood drifted from his pyramidal home. Ryu gulped as he snuck a peek inside. Solid pieces of flesh dripped from the ceiling. Blood was everywhere. Nails, hair, crumpled-up skin were in random spots. It looked like the inside of some sick, twisted serial killer's head. A crimson mist filled it. One had to remember Ryu's martial art. It allowed him to see the physical strength of another cultivator. But not only that, it allowed him to see their prowess and the dangers of that certain body. And what did Ryu see? A monster. Something he couldn't beat with his own body, or physical prowess. When Liam saw them, he visibly frowned. The elders chuckled awkwardly. That was their cue to leave. The process was painful. But it was worth it. Not only did Liam's plan work out, he even added a few alterations himself. The claws, the retractable tentacles, the streamlined body, along with smaller adjustments to his bone density and frame. Even his feet were webbed, giving him faster movement while walking on land, and swimming in water. They were little additions that didn't cost much to do, but would help nevertheless. Every part of him was a weapon. Plus, they were hideable. He could also transform into a full Ashura with no issues. Except, he'd still have 6 arms instead of 8. It's time, Liam thought with serious eyes. I haven't killed something in so long. Ever since the inheritance, it was just politics, work and experiments. Liam hadn't been able to test his strengths in some time. He hadn't even tested out his corruption on a real opponent. One had to balance their peace with a little bit of chaos. Liam donned the redirection cloak, which was just perfect for his needs. It hid the extra arms and his inhuman form perfectly. It was time to kidnap some dual imperialists. In reality, the kidnapping was going to be much more anticlimactic than Liam realized. Ucladd was the only one who could do such a thing without being caught. It was him with the strongest shadow abilities, and no one could mask their presence like he could. However, this was the limit of how much he could get involved. Preserving all his strength was for the final battle. For a battle against one of the two powerhouses, with Ucladd at his side. Thus, Ucladd, Liam, Elder Jax and Kitsu were in the same room. Ucladd looked at Liam with a probing gaze. His initial reaction to Liam's new body was a mix of surprise and a bit of confusion. But Ucladd couldn't deny how battle-oriented it was. "We're ready," Liam said with a serious voice. Ucladd heaved a long sigh. "Be right back." Slowly, a puddle of shadows consumed his body from below, until he disappeared completely. Silence. "How long will he be gone?" Kitsu said in a slightly bored tone, scratching her maw with a rear leg. "I'm hungry." Liam sighed. "For an animal with a mental sphere, you haven't changed in the least." "I'll take that as a compliment," Kitsu said, rubbing her chin over the carpet. Elder Jax glanced at Liam from the side. "No/I'll be in." Silence. "So?" Jax muttered, struggling to get the words out. Nice body?" "Nah, that came out wrong." Jax laughed. Liam sighed again. The reactions to his new body were mixed. On one hand, there were some admirers. Like Ryu, Jargon, Jax, even Jane and Aki. On the other hand, there were some people who thought it was a bit too terrifying to be practical. Like Orisa, the Golden Cranes, Kitsu and Krell. Nevertheless, there wasn't any change in how Liam was treated. Several minutes passed in silence. Kitsu was getting impatient. Liam and Jax just started cultivating. "Ugh, why am I here in the first place?" Kitsu said loudly, scratching the stone walls with her claws. "This is torture." Liam and Jax ignored her. "I'm gonna bolt for the door if..." Ucladd dramatically emerged from a puddle of darkness. An unconscious, female fear imperialist was clutched upside down in his hand. Finally, Ucladd landed with a long, tired sigh. He looked fatigued. "You can leave now, if you'd like," Liam said quickly. "We can take it from here." "Leave the rest to us, Master," Jax added in a firm but solemn voice. Ucladd nodded wordlessly, handing Jax the body to carry before leaving to his slumber. Jax had a glum look on his face. Seeing his mentor and teacher regress in health was a painful sight. But there was a reason Jax was here. A second pair of hands for torture, if it came to it. Chapter 379 Cloud Leech. Liam took a close look at the imperialist in question. Facial feature-wise, she didn't look too different to Aquarians. Short obsidian black hair. Long eyelashes of a similar color. Slim figure and brown skin. Her clothing was familiar to Liam. An obsidian black Roman toga, draped over her left shoulder all the way to her feet. There was also jewelry on her neck and earrings. A black metal of some kind. Other than that, she was a rank 3 magus with a rank 3 core and a rank 4 body. And she was still unconscious. Liam and Jax strapped the fear imperialist to a scary-looking chair. It would prevent her from biting her tongue and killing herself. As they finally snapped her into place, her eyes fluttered, before flickering open with panic. Liam noticed the unique color of her irises. Foggy white. As though she was blind. "Where am I?" the imperialist said in a threatening tone. "What have you done to me?" Judging by how she was glaring at Liam and Jax, she could probably still see. Liam always hid his presence with mental energy. It had become a subconscious thing after doing it for so long. Thus, she hadn't detected him through that method. Just to be sure, Liam connected his king's eye to her sea of consciousness. His theory proved right. Indeed, the woman could see. Only, it was a surreal shade of black and white. From her vision, Liam and Jax looked like they were made from hazy wisps of white smoke. Answer me, the imperialist screamed. Who are you? Friends, depending on how compliant you are, Jax said calmly, with a warm smile on his face. Done nothing yet. Could keep it that way, or we could go a different route. You see our furry friend over here? Jax pointed to Kitsu. She'd love nothing more than to rip and tear you apart. Instead of her usual bored look, Kitsu looked as rabid and vicious as she could, baring her fangs. And she did a pretty good job at it. Silence. What do you want? The imperialist said threateningly. To her credit, she wasn't afraid in the least. Liam could tell from her mental waves. She's already used to seeing horrors, Liam thought. Wait, come closer, she told Jax with a confused expression. You look familiar. Jax arched his brow. He leaned in. Tough. Just for the imperialist to spit in his face. Oldest trick in the book, the imperialist laughed. Are you stupid or something? Jax's face turned dark. How do you go in and out of the dual empire? Liam asked suddenly. Apparently, no one knew exactly how the dual empire entered and exited their lands. Not even Alucard, with his vast accumulations of knowledge, knew the specifics. Although there were gateways and borders, they were never seen leaving. If Liam found out, his job would get much, much easier. I don't know, the imperialist answered blankly, more annoyed than scared. Lies. Liam could tell. There was a reason Yusin kidnapped this woman in particular. She knew something. You know fear, Liam said. Do you know pain? From the cloak, Liam's hand blurred as he swiped a nail across her index finger. Her sliced index flew in the air with a spurt of blood, followed by a suppressed growl of pain. You have 9 more chances before I move to something more painful, Liam said with dead eyes. There was still no fear in the imperialist's blind eyes. Liam had to hand it to her. She was courageous, despite being from the Empire of Fear. There's no need to fear life if death is the final outcome, she said with a mocking smile. You have nothing to threaten me with, dog. Silence. Liam laughed coldly. N/O/V.E/L/B1.N. Never said I'll kill you, Liam smiled. Liam took off 2 more fingers. Ugh. A stifled cry of pain. Silence. But still no fear. 5 fingers in, and the imperialist was covered with sweat. There was a pained look on her pale face, and her breathing came in long gasps. Jax helped by applying significant pressure to her mental sphere. Still no fear. This won't faze her, Liam realized. All it's doing is worsening her condition. There's a fine line between courage and stupidity, and you've crossed it, Liam said. Liam's nail punctured lightly through the imperialist's arm. Is that supposed to hurt? The imperialist laughed. Ha ha ha. You're a jock. Corruption gathered at Liam's nail and injected straight through the woman's arm. The imperialist shut her mouth instantly as her arm and body spasmed uncontrollably. Shrill screams filled the dark chambers. A network of her veins grew black for a brief moment as corruption shot through her figure. It was a grim sight. Even Kitsu stopped acting, but Elder Jax had a stony expression. As her screams came to a stop, Liam took another look at her mental waves. Fear. Now she felt it. Tell me how, and I'll make it painless, Liam said, scraping her remaining arm with his razor-sharp nail. 2 seconds of silence passed, and Liam's nail punctured through her flesh. Stop. Stop. I'll tell you. Liam kept his nail where it was. Speak. We use the clouds, she said with a shaky breath. Abominations aren't just used for killing. They're also useful. If we have to go anywhere, we use a cloud leech to latch into a cloud. Jax raised his brows in amazement. He'd never heard of anything before. And, Liam asked. She was hiding something. It also makes us invisible to a certain degree. Now that was interesting. Do you have one now? Liam asked. The imperialist considered her words carefully. Liam's nail was still lodged in her arm, and silence was punishable. Yes. I do, she answered from clenched teeth. Liam pulled out his nail. Take it out, he ordered. With pained eyes, the imperialist opened her mouth. Abruptly, her canine tooth began detaching itself from her gums, wiggling out and slowly expanding in size. What came out was a fat and fluffy, caterpillar-like creature that made its way over to the center of the room. It was pure white, and resembled a cloud. On its front was a circular mouth with a series of spiral teeth. Liam smiled, then transmitted a few words to Jax. Found the tickets to their country. Chapter 380 Innocent. Liam put his hand on the cloud leech. Soft. It was incredibly soft. Like a literal cloud. One could even call it cute, with how soft and harmless it looked. This is an abomination? Looks like something out of a child's fantasy, Jax said, squishing the giant creature. It occupied a large section of the chambers, and made a soft squealing noise from its mouth. Pull it back, Liam told the imperialist. Slowly, the cloud leech was sucked back into her tooth, hardening back to normal. It was then that Liam noticed how the tip of her canines, and every other tooth, had 2 little dots on them, and brighter tones than normal. All of her teeth were cloud leeches. No wonder Ucladd picked her out of everyone else. Liam half expected for the woman to attack them with an abomination. He welcomed it, actually. But she didn't, despite being unrestricted with her mental energy and other abilities. All this woman could do was provide cloud leeches with her teeth. What happens if I pull a tooth out? Liam asked casually. Does the abomination still work, or no? The woman grumbled, probably considering whether or not to tell the truth. She had a feeling Liam would yank out a tooth if she lied. Curses, it would. But you won't be able to command it. Only I can, since I'm the one who subdued it. Truth. A short pause. Subduing an abomination lets you control it? Liam questioned curiously. No, said the imperialist. Subduing it is one part of the problem. Maintaining it is another. Special techniques are required for each abomination. Liam hummed to himself in thought. Liam looked at Jax. There's no need to delay it any longer. We're leaving for the Dual Empire. Liam gave Jax a firm nod. Jax responded with a hard nod of his own, before heading out to let everyone know of what was to come. Liam glanced at the imperialist. She had no space rings on her figure, but Liam took off the jewelry from her figure. They were inscribed items. But Liam could tell they held no special purpose, other than to exude a shiny black glow. I won't help, the imperialist said with defiant, blind eyes, but it sounded like she was convincing herself. Very honorable, Liam deadpanned. Just then, Liam's cloak fluttered open, and all 4 of his arms swung open, revealing 20 fingers with 20 nails on them. The imperialist's face fell. Of all the abominations she'd seen in her life, she'd never seen one so terrifying. Corruption flared on each of Liam's nails. Screens. Since the matters of invading a country were quite complicated, not every acolyte was trusted to come along. End.He Velben. Of course, each and every one of the acolytes would be useful for battle. And they itched for battle. But they were inexperienced, and there were too many for something that required discretion. And thus, Liam denied their requests to tag along. Instead, they'd be heading off to the Corsan lands with the vampires, along with a few elders. Once Liam and those with him successfully connected the world gate to Corsa, they'd join the fray. It was a cloudy night when more than 36 elders were gathered atop the island's cliff, awaiting Liam's orders. The imperialist had a sudden change of heart. She'd comply. But before that, Liam met with Ucladd one last time. How long do you have left? Liam asked, after waking Ucladd up from his slumber. Ucladd wiped the sleep from his eyes. Not long. But I can delay it by entering a comatose state, he said. I'll be as dead as a doornail, but it could extend my life for at least 7 months. Liam nodded firmly. I'll be leaving then, Liam said tersely, heading for the door. It might have seemed cold, but Liam knew Yusin's personality. Wallowing about his sickness and speaking more of it would bring only bitterness. This way, at least Yusin would be treated as though he wasn't sick. "Oh, and Liam?" Yusin called out before Liam exited. Liam looked over his shoulder. "Yeah?" A short pause. "Thanks," Yusin said with a slight smile and soft eyes. The mood got a bit heavy then. Liam scoffed lightly and gave a small nod. A quiet gesture that Yusin clearly appreciated. Then, Liam left. Yusin was not innocent. That much was clear. To the clansmen he killed from his own country, to regular innocents killed on his path to revenge. But to the temple, it didn't matter. He provided a home for the unwanted and outcast. All criminals, sure. But still. In the first place, this all started with Yusin's quest for justice. He just wanted to avenge the losses suffered during the wars in his country. And in Liam's book, that was fine. On one side you're hailed as a hero, and the other, a demon. And who could tell which one Yusin was? Liam made his way towards the cliff, where the imperialist and elders stood. The elders all wore similar cloaks to Liam. Only they didn't have redirection capabilities. A distant, constantly scared look was on the imperialist's face, with healed puncture wounds on her arms. Liam stopped after the 5th corruption injection. Then, he made Elder Jack sign a binding oath with her. Since binding oaths couldn't be forced upon someone without their permission. Even Elder Jax felt a bit bad for her, despite how the imperialist had spat in his face. Liam heaved a long sigh. "We can start." Jax grabbed Liam from the shoulder, then looked up. Elder Jane grabbed the imperialist. Whoosh! All of the elders shot towards the clouds. Loud wind shot past Liam's ears. With every second, the ground grew more and more distant, and the vast skies filled his vision. Liam loved this view. For 1 hour straight, the group made a beeline towards the clouds. A few magical beasts attempted to attack them, but there wasn't much that could threaten so many zeniths. Liam's ears tightened and his skin felt a soft chill. Eventually, they brushed past a dense cloud. Liam glanced at the imperialist. Blurg. Dozens of cloud leeches exploded from her mouth.